Hey, I want to take some time today to talk about something that I hadn't planned on talking about today, so this might be a little disjointed and rambling. But I wanted to talk about this whole notion that the left has that more guns equals more crime. If you're as old as I am, you remember that things were different in the 60s and 70s regarding guns. If you were a male that lived in a suburban area or a rural area, you were very likely to own a gun. I'm not saying everybody owned guns, but those people were, especially if you were a white male. Now, a lot of people will say that statistic is sexist and racist, but no, it's not sexist or racist. It's just a statistic. It can't be sexist or racist. It's just a number. That's just reality. I would love to see more minorities own guns, but that's not the topic of this video. And more women own guns, but that's not the topic of this video. I think it's happening, but that's not the topic of this video. But like I say, back in the 80s, when Democrats really started taking control because they pander to the left for their ignorant votes, their uninformed votes, let's just say, which ignorant is the same thing, but people think you're calling them dumb when you call them ignorant. But back in the 80s, they really started this war on guns. The whole notion that guns cause violent crime really came into prominence in the 80s. It was different before that. But their whole basis of their argument is that more guns equals more violence, more violent crime. And I just wanted to take a moment today to point out that that's total bunk. Now, I know a lot of people will say, well, this study from Harvard said this, and this study from that said this, and blah, blah, blah. Those studies have all been debunked based on math and just on the fact that they were biased from the very beginning. Now, you might say, well, why do these schools and stuff make these studies if they're going to be debunked? Well, because they want their leftist supporters to have something to talk about. Even if a study from 2 years ago is completely debunked, people will still use it and hope that no one knows it was debunked. So that's why they produce these studies. But here's the reality. Here's the numbers you want to look at. Now, I was sent the new 2018 ATF Statistical Review of Firearms today by a viewer, Jody Butler. I'm not sure if that's a boy Jody or a girl Jody. I haven't known many Jodys in my life, and I don't like the name Jody just because I can never tell if it's a boy or girl. In fact, the only Jodys I've ever known were on Family Affair, and one was an evil pig. I think the one on Family Affair was a boy, but I'm not real sure about the evil pig. So I don't like the name Jody for that reason, but no offense to Jody. So I wanted to take a look today at the number of firearms in this country and how they relate to violent crime because this new annual statistical review came out. Well, let's look at the number of guns in this country. Now, before we look at the number of guns, let's keep in mind that the population since the 1980s in this country has gone up about 30%. We're making too many fucking babies. So population's gone up. Keep that in mind, 30%. People, keep it in your pants. Too many people. But, and I'm not going to talk about how minorities or immigrants or anything. That's also another video. But let's look at just the number of guns, and let's relate it to that 30% increase in population. Now, if the number of guns stays relative to the increase in population, then violent crime rates should just stay the same. If guns are the reason for violent crime, or even a major cause of violent crime, should stay about the same. So let's look at this here. Population's gone up 30%. Well, let's look at guns manufactured in this country since in the 80s and in today. Now, back in the 80s, the average number annually produced was about 3 million. Now, the average number annually produced here domestically is about 12 million. That's a 300% increase, not a 30% increase. That means violent crimes should be going up. Let's look at imports. Imports have really gone up. Imports have gone up from like 700,000 to 4.5 million. Mainly because of Glock and other polymer guns from Austria and other countries. But that's a 500% increase. That's a huge increase. So just looking at imports and production, we've gone from like a little over 3.5 million to 16 million. That's a huge increase. Huge increase. So we know that the number of guns has gone up exponentially in this country. Now, a lot of people might say, well, a lot of them guns are being exported. Exports have gone up too. Well, exports have gone up. They've gone up about 66%. Exports now make about 3% of the number of guns that are made in this country are exported. Not even that much, but it's close to 3%. It used to be in the 80s, it was 6%. So even though the number's gone up, the percentage of guns made that are exported have gone down. So that's actually more guns in the hands of Americans. That number has gone up. So now when we look and we see oh, there's tons of guns in this country now, more than there was. That would mean violent crime rates are going up, obviously, because the number of guns has way outpaced the population growth. So we should be living in a war zone now. But you know, we're not. We have gone in the 80s from a crime rate that was twice what it is now. Depending on what numbers you look at, there is about a 50% decrease in violent crime since the 80s, when the number of guns started skyrocketing. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, well, that's because in the 80s we enacted all these gun laws. Nope, the gun laws had no effect. In fact, most of the gun laws went away. The gun laws that still exist now, while crime rates are so low, are the gun laws that existed then. You got to remember, gun laws that exist now have been around since the late 60s, early 70s. They've been in effect for over a decade in the 80s. Sometimes 2 decades, depending on the law. So that isn't the reason. There's no basis for that whatsoever. So here's the reality. There's been a ton of increase in guns. A ton. And violent crime has gone down. Now, I know some people like to say, well, yeah, but if you look at states that have the most guns, they'll have the most violent crime. Well, like Arizona and these other border states. No, they have high violent crime because they are on a border with a violent nation that spills over the border. If you look at a state that's in the Northeast that has the same laws as this state, they have almost no gun crime. Very little numbers. So those studies have also been debunked as being biased and misrepresenting numbers. So when you look at the reality, there are way more guns in this country now than there's ever been. Violent crime is declining at a very fast rate. There's still a lot of gang violence. There's still domestic violence. All that stuff exists. But overall violent crime has gone down sharply. So this whole notion that more guns equals more violence is bunk. There's nothing that can support it. When you have more guns, all you have is more people that are now no longer potential easy victims, as I've said in other videos. So I just want to encourage everyone to go out there, read this statistic report. I mean, it even talks about the number of 4473s. That number was like 170-something thousand in the 80s, and now it's up 10 times. So people are filling out forms to buy guns 10 times the rate now that they were in the 80s, yet violent crime's still going down. Now, a lot of people say, well, it's because more people are owning more guns, and that's part of it. A lot of people are owning more guns, but still, if guns cause crime, if I own 1 gun, shouldn't I be a certain amount likely to cause a crime? And if I own 10 guns, well, then shouldn't I be 10 times more likely since I own more guns and guns cause crime? And that little scenario there shows you how ridiculous the whole notion is that an inanimate object causes an action, like a personal action. So just encourage everyone, go over and read those statistics. Be ready to counter people when they say more guns equals more violence, because it's bunk. It makes you have to wonder, what are the people that are behind the misinformation on the left about guns equaling more crime? What's their real goal? Why do they really want to demonize guns, and why do they want to get rid of guns? Because the numbers don't support them, ever. So just go over there, read that study, make up your own mind, and don't ask me, link the study, link the state. Look it up. It's the ATF Annual Statistical Review of Firearms in this country. It's easy to find. It's on their website. So go find it, read it, make up your own mind, and then the next time an anti says to you that guns cause crime, hit them with the numbers and watch them resort to panicked emotion, because the numbers don't back them up at all. Waging a war on firearms, mainly since the 80s. Fuck. I got some information that I wanted to talk about. It was sent to me by a viewer. 4.5, that's 16.5 million. Whereas before it wasn't even 4 million. Oh, motherfucker! I just fucking put that on mute. I hit do not disturb.